Hello to all those beautiful people out there that are humans. We are talking today about gender. And this is part one of the discussion where we're going to focus more on the woman side of gender. And so I got a good friend with me today to discuss that. Here we go. Hello and welcome to this edition of the Young Americans Podcast. This is Dr. G, and we have the lovely Shannon with us today because we're going to be talking about gender, something that's really important to a lot of people. It's a subject that needs to be discussed, so let's just get into it. Shannon, take it away.
Thank you very much, Dr. G. I guess the best way for me to start out with gender is to start off with feminism. And to get sort of a reading of you, Greg, tell me how you define feminism.
I think feminism has come kind of full circle, and maybe part of that is Obama saying that, he's a feminist, and I think that sort of changed the lens that people look at it through, and I think I share his opinion of that, feminism to me is being supportive of femininity, women, women's rights, culture, equality, and all of those things as they're practiced in society. So I consider myself to be a feminist in that way. I do think it's still okay to joke about things, and I wouldn't go so far as to say that we need to have it be person hole cover instead of man hole cover. I think that's where we kind of get off track. But in general, I'm, as supportive of women as I can be. And I think that that's ultimately my idea of feminism. What would you say is your interpretation of feminism?
I mean, to me, feminism is the promotion of equality. And I don't understand always why people get so finicky about the word of feminism, because it is female, and we are, as you said, manhole cover. We are so comfortable with typically male oriented names when women want to stand up and be like, how about we put the feminine first?
Sure.
They just get all out of sorts. But to me, feminism, it's equality. And to me, the promotion of equality is the promotion of equals, of both men and women, and
right.
Not necessarily listing out differences, but acknowledging the strengths and weaknesses of each gender, so then we can further move forward more quickly together, which it always seems so obvious.
Yeah, I think you're right. It does seem obvious. It's kind of sad. It's something that has to be discussed. But it's true that, there are problems in society that we're focusing on, and we have to kind of discuss, because there is a difference in terms of how people view gender, and everything that you just mentioned in terms of feminism, femininity. That's the beginning of it, kind of, male versus female in the mind of most people, right?
Right, and I think that discussion is important. It's not important to discuss whether or not you consider yourself a feminist. Let's just assume that we all want equality for people, but let's take it to that next level. Let's take it to that next step. Okay, let's talk about feminism. Let's talk about where society falls down and where society sees women as only their weaknesses and not their strengths, and then sees men as only their strengths and not their weaknesses.
Sure.
And
where do you think those places are that society kind of falls apart and doesn't see women the correct way?
Well, I think it's at this point in 2017, I think it's become a lot more subtle and a lot more, subconscious. I mean, it starts to me in schools. You hear about, and being not, I'm not going to use the word woke in this situation, but being very
Hashtag woke.
aware. Hashtag woke, guys. Oh, hashtag. Um, paying attention as a child and, growing up in the 90s and, coming from a baby boomer generation who were swept up in that wave of first wave feminism, and being raised to being told, one of the first generations to be told that you are equal and told to be, at least I was aware of the fact that there is inequality,
Sure.
and going through, and you would see certain very subtle ways in math classes and science classes where boys might be a little bit more favored, and then the imagery that you run into. Most scientists that you see, though, I love me some Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I would pray at the altar of Bill Nye. Where's I can't even list off the top of my head a female scientist outside of like Marie Curie who we were told to idolize.
Sure.
And told and shown that is a possibility.
Okay, so just in general, the like heroes that are put up for us to look up to, you feel like we're a little thin in the woman department there?
Exactly. And I mean, that is starting to shift. I see, posts for books on Facebook that are all about women scientists or all about women who influence, but those aren't books that are in classrooms or things like that. And that's just the start. That's just the beginning. That's because it's not just about being an adult and being in the workforce. It's subtle little ways that women are, I guess, chipped away at throughout their childhood before they even become adults, before they even become aware of the actual larger societal, you don't have equal pay, you're not looked at as being capable enough, and from people who before in the 1950s would smack your ass, and that was an obvious sign that they didn't believe that you were as capable as they are. But
hey,
it's
good job out there, babe. Yeah.
Right, because I am only my tits and my ass. Like that's all I got to give.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, when I hear that though, the only contrary to that, because you say chipping away at women, and so one of the things that is being forced upon us that we have to sort through in our culture now is, what is a woman, what is a man? Like you mentioned, our generation has kind of grown up having the benefit of that question being opened a little bit, and there's more debate there in terms of what is a woman and is a man. So let's just start with that. What in your definition is a woman?
I think, to me, the greatest thing about being a woman is the diversity that definition can contain. I mean, because it's so little has to do with one specific stereotype. Because women can both, on the simplest level, like I can wear pants and I can wear a skirt. Like I can walk into a room and, be a leader, and I can walk into a room and be a participant. It's everything.
I agree.
Which,
yeah. I've seen you do both, so I can vouch for you.
No, as someone, who has definitely, and I like to think of myself like I'm somewhat out of the norm, and I've been told in varying situations like that I can both fit in with men and with women.
Sure.
But I think for me, like the broadest definition of a woman, is strength, because everything that goes in to being a modern woman for me has to come from some level of strength, because you are, you're getting up each morning and defining yourself by the things that you choose to superficially wear, because that is automatically, you walk out the door and you are, did you choose to wear sweatpants today? Did you choose to wear a dress today? Like, how did you choose to do your hair? We are looked at very surfacely, which is fine. Like we have eyes, like you have to do that. But for women, there's that little bit of extra scrutiny that goes into the choices that you made. Did you choose to present yourself as super feminine, as, not caring, as super fashionable?
Right. And I don't disagree with any of that for certain, but the question I'm trying to pose to you is basically to pigeonhole you to define what a woman is in like 3 words. You know what I mean? In terms of like what I'm getting at is that there's a logic that a woman is a vagina and breasts, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or speaking genetically, a woman is 2X chromosomes.
Yes.
So, do you think that there's a distilled down way to even answer that question of what is a woman?
Okay, I'm gonna say no, because there's there's so many different ways to describe a woman, because there are so many different types of women. Like, I know women who are kind and caring and giving, and I know women who are strong and self-reliant and selfish.
Right,
Like,
and I know dudes that are self-reliant and selfish, but I would never call them a woman. So you see what I'm getting?
yeah.
I'm trying to lean you towards the ultimate discussion in our culture now, in terms of the liberal side, is that gender is something that society forms. Gender
Yeah.
is a social construct. Do you agree with that logic?
I think, yeah. No, okay. Yes. Yeah. No, I thought about it. I can agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it makes sense because you're saying a woman can't be distilled down to one single definition, one single attribute physically or mentally,
Mhm.
and that supports your concept that it's a social construct. It's things around that individual that their interaction with those things and vice versa that makes them quote unquote a woman.
Right, it's
And
the expectations that society puts on you based on your gender.
right. And I can completely respect that viewpoint. I have the polar opposite viewpoint, and maybe that's my science background speaking, or, that sort of thing. But I just think that, we have to be able to define what is a woman and what is a man, because I could care less, and I'm sure we'll get to the, Caitlyn Jenner thing and whatever. But I could care less what somebody wants me to call them and thinks they are. I will abide all of it. I'll call you Kate. You can be a woman if you want. That's your decision. But
Mhm.
I think ultimately there's a challenge in society because we have to interact with society. And on some level, that's just interpersonal, me to you, having a conversation. On another level, it could be filling out an application for a job, and you have to check a box, and there's man or woman there, right? And in some countries, they actually have gone so far to support your ideas that, they want 40% of the workforce at a company to be a woman. And if I check a box and I'm a man saying that I'm a woman just to get a job, is that fair? Right? So I just come at it from that angle of that ultimately I will support whatever people would like me to call them, and that's a respect factor. But once you get out into society, there are certain levels of society that we can't have that flexibility with. And that is where the conversation usually breaks down. And people feel like society is preventing them from being who they want to be, or, the bathroom issue, those sorts of things, where society now struggles with that because we've basically had a, yes or no type of idea of what a man or a woman is, right? And then,
Right.
they step into it and they try and have it be more flexible. But if there's only 2 boxes to check, how flexible can that question be? And then the consequences of, not following it, right?
Right. Well, and I think that that is still where society is faltering. I think the obsession with making sure that there is 50% or 40% or whatever quotas that they feel that they need to fill to be able to say that they are, truly equal, is still, a construct of the past. It's still men saying that, oh, we need to acknowledge that we have this, that we can show that we have this. So it's, it's a what, I don't want to say this.
So you're not saying it's
It's
like
a bridge. No, I got it. It's
Uh-huh.
a bridge. It's a bridge. It's like how Title IX was a bridge to help women get into sports,
Mhm.
and affirmative action was a way to help people of color, Black people, Hispanic people, get into the education system. But I think, like with, you know, it should be something that's temporary though, because I would like to think in the future there will be no, quotas to fill for neither race nor gender, because strong applicants will apply, and you know woke, quote unquote, evolved bosses will pick the best candidate, and the best candidates will rise to the top, and it won't matter what color they are, what gender they are, how they identify in any way, because it will just be about performance, it will just be about their job.
And I agree
And but
with you, yeah. And I think conversations like this are going to get us there of understanding the different angles that people see things. But I wanted to pose a question to you because you had mentioned sports and you had kind of talked about the past for a second. So I wanted to give an example in the past. You saw the movie Titanic, right? The James Cameron classic.
I I mean, I saw it 7 times in theaters, and I had a birthday surrounded by it. So yeah, I would say that I've seen it.
Okay,
Yeah,
and I would say that definitely makes you a woman then. No, that's not not my example, but in
that
that
makes me attracted to Leonardo DiCaprio, and then eventually later Kate Winslet. But
yeah.
besides the point, besides the point.
Oh yeah. So, my example is in that movie, the boat's going down and they only have so many lifeboats they can put people in. And
Yeah.
what is, being told to people as the violin players continue playing? Women and children first. Right? So, if you were on the boat of the Titanic and you're lucky enough to get into one of those lifeboats as a woman, and you're looking back at the ship, and the next person that approaches is clearly a man, has the classic curly mustache and the top hat and all that, and they say, "Yo, buddy, sorry, it's just women and children, okay?" And he says, "Well, but I am a woman. I feel like I'm a woman." Would you let him onto that boat?
Wow. This is a very overly specific question that I don't think
And I
can
realize
be,
you might not
like,
be the
genuinely answered in context.
Well,
Like,
okay, let me expand the question in
that's
terms
the
of
discussions they were having on the Titanic as people are like being rushed onto a boat.
obviously,
Okay.
obviously. I'm not trying to put you in that position of like you're dictating who gets on boats and not and make you the
But-
bad guy, but I'm just posing it as a larger example of somebody could tell you they think they're a woman. They feel
Okay.
like they're a woman, and then what is the consequence of basically having to live with that determination in their own mind?
Well, quick, actual, factual side note story that is ridiculously relevant to that question. So I am doing this family history project for this woman, and one of her relatives was on the Titanic, and they were telling people only women and children. So her male cousin, or it was some distant, more farther back, uncle or something like that, found a dress, put a dress on, and got on one of those boats.
Damn.
That's how he got off the Titanic. And he had stuffed, like, they have, like, I was like, okay, sure, great story. But he had taken they had taken a picture of the Titanic as it was about to set sail, and they were selling the pictures on the Titanic. He had taken a bunch and stuffed them in the dress and, like, handed them out to relatives, because he, got into the boat, and then eventually the other people realized that he was not a woman, and so they made him row and eventually get them to safety. And then he had all these pictures of the Titanic, and they have one of those pictures of the Titanic. So,
Oh my
total
Lord.
random side note story, but weirdly specifically relevant to the question.
That is so random. You see the concept I'm putting forward though of if we have to interact with other people on a certain level and make decisions based on input information. If that person is telling you, "Well, I feel like a woman," right? Are we allowing them on the boat then? If that's the level that we're accepting.
I mean, if the boat means that you identify as a woman, then yeah, like I guess I don't understand, like, what are you getting at? Like,
Well, what I'm getting at is that at some point, someone on the fucking boat while they were sinking on the Titanic was like, look, we only got enough boats, right? Women and children first. Somebody made that judgment, right? For one reason or another. And I think everyone would agree, yes, let's save the women and children first. No one is like, kill all the fucking children. I'm getting in the boat, right? Or at least they don't shout it, hopefully. So,
or every man for himself.
right, exactly. So what I'm getting at is that at some point somebody made a determination of, look, we need to save the women and children. Not necessarily they're more valuable, but those are the people we're determining that have priority here. And if all it takes is somebody saying, well, I feel like I'm a woman, then that decision kind of just falls apart, right? There's no like benefit of making that decision at all. It would be like saying every man and woman for themselves, right? Because if all it takes is somebody to walk up to the boat with their dick out saying, I'm a woman, man. I feel like it. I think I'm a woman. Then you can't make decisions like that to save women and children first, right? Because you can't make decisions based on the information accurately. That's what I'm getting at. Is that it's not the person in the boat's fault or whatever. It's that whoever shouted originally, women and children first, that statement cannot be made any longer. If we're going to accept all it takes is a guy to say, hey, I'm a woman, and then they get to get on the boat, right?
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. I feel like you are, let's say, grossly simplifying gender in that way, and gender identification
that would be an understatement.
in that way.
Yeah, and I'm aware of that, but I'm just giving an example of.
I mean, I get that it's a fairly abstract example as well. I mean, are you upset with the fact that women and children are prioritized?
Not at all. Not at all. What I'm saying is that if I was on the boat and someone shouted that, not only would I not put a dress on, but I would help women and children onto the lifeboats. And I would agree with the logic of the person who shouted that. You know, that yes, we should put women and children on there. But if I just set a little kid down in the boat and I turn around and there's a dude saying, look, I'm a woman, I'm going to get on the boat, I would say, go fuck yourself. There's not room for you. We're putting women and children on, right?
Okay, I feel like we need a new example, because I'm just getting all caught up in the fact that, like, in 1912, gender identity was pretty rigid and straightforward, and, like, homosexuality was very closeted, and the concept of being transgender was really almost non-existent. And
so if we updated it and you were on a cruise liner going to Alaska and it went down and someone shouted women and children first into the lifeboat today,
do they still do that though? Like, are women and children still
that's exactly my point, Shannon. I don't think that we can now have that rule anymore, because we've literally gotten so flexible with what does it mean to be a woman, that you can't have statements like that be made. You can't have policies like that be made in a disaster situation, because what does it even mean to be a woman if all I have to do is say it's a social construct? I feel like a woman. Where's my seat on the lifeboat? Right?
Yeah, I don't know.
And that's what I'll get off this example, but what I'm getting at is that with this example, I'm trying to illustrate how if we're going to believe that gender is a social construct, then that leads to consequences. And obviously a very simple, abstract consequences when a boat goes down, we can't say women and children first. But okay, if you expand on that,
I disagree. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I feel that, the extreme situations of emergencies, people may resort to a more simplistic time of, women and children in more norm gender roles, and males feeling the need to protect what they see as, weaker humans, being women and children. I mean, I'm not completely always in support of saving the children first.
See, it's just ironic to me
me as an adult, like 30 years of both, education and carbon have been invested into me. I find my life to be more valuable than, some 2-year-old down the street. Like, I'm sorry, it sounds crass, but, if I died, there would be more of an impact on the world than if that fucking 2-year-old died. Yeah, it would be devastating to his parents, but dude, I've got more friends than that fucking 2-year-old.
Yeah, seriously, that 2-year-old can't even paint yet. I agree with
Right?
you. And to point out a strange irony there of, we began in saying that one of the things about women is strength. And then in a situation, all of a sudden, women are the people who have no strength, right?
Right.
And that's just an interesting societal duality that we have,
Right,
right?
because that we're still in transition. Like, it will still be, if either of us, whatever, children, future generations, it'll be a while until we fully see, and this, dream of equality is realized in a way that it doesn't need to be even addressed anymore.
Right. And the last thing I'll say about the boat thing is that if we took it away of people being able to just say, well, I'm a woman or I'm a man, and they had to take a test or something, would you submit that that's fair? Of, let's say, for example, it was a blood test and then it showed their chromosomes and they were in fact a man. Now they can't get on the boat. Would that be fair?
Who's doing fucking blood tests at the Titanic?
Well, I bring it up because I'm trying to
that's-
transition to sports. Of that, you
Oh,
had brought
okay,
up
yeah, yeah.
sports, and that, like the example of Bruce Jenner, okay, an Olympic athlete, right, and then through transition or whatever you want to call the process. Clearly, I don't know his specific medical history, but he obviously, or she obviously, whatever pronoun you're comfortable with, is a woman now.
She is comfortable with the pronoun of she, so we will respect her
Okay,
wishes.
I'll submit to that. She is a woman now. Now, if we enrolled Caitlin into the next Olympics, would you be okay with Caitlin competing against other women in the triathlon?
In the over 70 senior Olympics?
They do have senior Olympics. I don't know if it's like on scooters or rascals, but they
The bitch
they
is
do.
old. The bitch is old.
Let's
All right,
say she
so,
wasn't 70, for example.
okay. I think that this is a very complicated situation that has not been addressed enough, either from a social societal standpoint or from a medical standpoint. And I think that there should be some sort of standardized measurement or formula that can be done. Because on my admittedly very rudimentary knowledge of gender confirmation is the politically correct way to say it, or is the respectful way to say it. Because politically correct, I know, gets a little bit of flack because we don't, politically incorrect.
Sure, but it's the way that we prefer it.
Right,
yeah.
no, but the respectful way to address this gender change is confirmation. It is confirmation of self and it's confirmation of identity for these people. And
How do you do that?
Right, exactly. And I don't know exactly how, but I do know that the effects of, especially from because for the sports things, a lot of people seem to be more addressed with what is perceived to be not as perceived to be. I will say the genetically stronger gender of male to the genetically weaker. Like, it's a fact. Like, in general, women build less muscle unless you're Serena Williams and you are a pure goddess.
Purely ripped.
Who can
Yeah.
win a grand slam while growing a child inside of her. I'm sorry. Like, if that's not the epitome of strength, I don't fucking know what is.
Right.
But, it depends on when you start. So let's say you are born and you are identified as male and you grow into your consciousness and realize that you actually are a female. Depending on how early you start that hormone process, especially if you start it pre-puberty, I mean, the effects, you would never know. I mean, and especially with the transgender people that I am in contact with on a regular basis. And I've been, I guess, I find it lucky because I'm just so interested in one of our mutual friend's younger sister now. She started transitioning when she was, I want to say, 16 years old,
Okay.
and taking hormones and that kind of stuff. And if you look at pictures of her today, which I have taken some lovely pictures of her today, you see that her frame is smaller. Her muscle density is that of a average 21-year-old slim build female.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if she, did Olympic level training, the hormones that have been blocked, the testosterone that has been blocked out of her system now for, I think it's at least 3 to 5 years, it's not there anymore. That testosterone level is not there. Even if she trained and worked as hard as she could at this point, she would not be able to get the muscle density that she would have been able to get had she not been taking hormones. So that's an earlier transition. So I don't know if they have to start marking where the hormones are, or if you go in and you test, they've, been on hormones, they're 25, they've been on hormones since they were 21, and seeing where that testosterone level marks or where that muscle density marks.
So you would be comfortable with that person checking whatever box they, thought they were, versus having like an implicit scientific test, like a genetic test or something.
Right. You can identify as what you feel that you are. That is regardless. You can box check as much as you want, but I think, the strength and the sports participation, I think it does need to be addressed. And I think that I find what I would think would be the ideal place where it could start would be in the NCAA, because of all that fucking money that they have to put in the research, to put in the time to really dig into this issue, and then possibly set the standard for what then high schools and then maybe eventually even professional level sports would have to live up to. Because I don't think creating a transgender league would really fix Why do you laugh? What is funny about that?
Dude,
That is
the WNBA is barely even surviving. No one's gonna watch Caitlyn try and dunk on some chick.
Okay, this is true. This is true. But I think that it is. I think that your concern and your questions are totally valid, and we are such in this young stage of transgender people becoming, visible in society.
But you won't accept that it should be something as simple as just a blood test, that it has to be something more complicated. It can't be something as simple as, okay, before we, begin the season, we need everybody to come in for the blood test. Thank you for the blood. And then they go home, and then, okay, so it turns out that you actually are a man. And this is, the NCAA women's basketball league. So we won't be able to allow you into this league. It should not be as simple as that, is what you're saying?
No, based on, genetic markers and a blood test. No, because to me, it's more of a so when you say blood test, do you mean that's like a hormone balance
I literally
test?
mean, if you took someone's blood, you got cell structures, you broke them down, their DNA would be in there, and it would be either an XX chromosome or an XY chromosome, which would denote a male, right? And of course, there's other small variations depending on things that can happen, but speaking generally, it's XX or XY. And that's what I'm referring to in a blood test of, if we were going to have the women's NCAA league, maybe at the beginning of it, because if we can just check a box and say, look, we're a guy, and play in that league, that's going to lead to a problem.
So it's, again, oversimplification. It's not just about checking a box. Like what transgender people have to go through, not only paperwork is really at the end of it, because the transition of societal and how people perceive you, and the fucking obsession people have gotten now with what bathroom you can use, when it comes down to checking that box, that box check is, it's at the end.
Absolutely, and I'm not trying to downplay there. I completely understand that the transition phase and figuring out who you are and how comfortable you are with your body, and if your body doesn't look like what you feel like you are, that is an immensely complex scenario that cannot be distilled down to a simple yes or no question or whatever. But the angle that I'm coming at it with again is that while I realize that an individual might go through that super awful discovery period or maybe super beautiful discovery period, and as wide ranging as the definitions they may put on themselves of what are they, as wide ranging as that is, that individual still has to interact with society in some way, or still has to interact with, in this example, a basketball league in some way. And, society, the basketball league, whatever the example we're going to give, ultimately has to kind of come down to a simple question at times for sake of being able to run correctly or prevent abuse or what have you. There's ultimately, it has to be simplified down to some level, right?
Right. And transgender women want to be identified as a woman, and they want to function and participate in the world as a woman.
Right.
And that, will include sometimes wanting to play basketball. And I think that it's more of a hormone thing. It's more of a testosterone, because if you tested all the women, you tested all their testosterone levels, and one woman came out and had high testosterone levels.
Right. Are we going to kick her out or something? I mean, if that's just how her body operates, it's like she is still genetically a woman, right?
Right, but if she's taking like synthetic hormones is really what I'm saying, is like doping.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, when we talk about, what drugs are used to make that transition, that's an entire other conversation and can of worms of, can you be using those and be currently playing sports? That's a whole nother thing, and I do feel like that detracts from the actual point of what is a man and what is a woman. But I did want to say that in terms of the sports, the reason that I bring it up is I think there's two ways that society has to go with it. And this is what we have to sort out as people. We either say fuck it, and it just doesn't matter what you are and what league you play in. And it's just, look, if you want to play with boys, play with boys. And there's going to be consequences for that. When you catch an elbow down in the paint playing basketball and you're a chick, it's probably going to be worse than if you were playing with other girls, right? And whether you consider yourself a girl or a boy, I'm just saying, as you mentioned, you're not going to have the physique of a 6'8", forward playing for the Chicago Bulls, right? And there's going to be a consequence of if you're trying to compete on that level. And I think, a lot of people have seen that video of the chick who's playing football in high school, and, she handles it well. She, has a play, they drop her to the ground, she pops right back up and says, hey, nice one, nice hit. And then they move forward. So that is a potential way society can go, of we just say fuck it and let people play whatever they want. The downside, I think, the other way, is that a lot of people are just sick, disgusting assholes. And if there is a guy out there who could get a Nike contract saying he's a woman and playing in a woman's league, he will do it. There is someone out there that will do that. And I'm not saying we have to make rules that affect everybody to prevent one asshole from getting a Nike contract. What I'm saying is that by human nature, there are people that will abuse systems and will abuse things to suit themselves. And the only way we can prevent that is having simplified, distilled down rules. So what do you think about those two divergent ways? Do you agree that
right.
those are options?
I think so, and I've heard this before. I've heard what would prevent a man from going in and saying, I want to be, play with a woman. I think there are a lot of things that are going to prevent him from joining the WNBA. I mean, particularly people's willingness to call bullshit on, not necessarily someone's want to confirm their gender identity, but it's not fucking cool to be transgender. There's no other benefits of claiming to be a transgendered person. It is a lengthy, expensive process that's not just you shave your beard and start putting a bra on and automatically you are a woman and society sees you as a woman.
Well, let's not leave out any transgender women that keep their beard, okay? I don't want to offend anybody here.
Obviously, no offense to anybody.
But
there's so few. I just can't see someone being able to to identify, to fakely identify as a woman. Like, women are already seen as less, so to fakely identify as a woman, spend years because to get a Nike contract, it's not that you just all of a sudden rock up one day in the WNBA. Like, you need to go through years of going through, different tiers of lower level, different games and leagues, and building your reputation, and like that takes fucking time. And someone that would be dedicated to not to being a transgendered person for that long, and to get all the way to the level to where they'd be offered a Nike contract seems absurd.
I know, but then I submit to you like Fox News and things like that, where there's no way people really think that way, but they make a career, 20 years. Look at Bill O'Reilly, like 30 years of, pushing a certain idea that, I mean, maybe they really do think that. Maybe, how am I supposed to know? But I'm just submitting the idea that there are, and I think the reason that people like you have a difficulty accepting that example is because you're not that type of person at all. You're very much, look, this is who I am, take it or leave it. And you would not manipulate that for your own gain. But there are people out there that are much less of a person than you and have nothing to be proud of in themselves and would look for some weakness in society that they could exploit somehow. Now, I'm not saying they would do it just to get a Nike contract, but I'm giving the idea of there is somebody out there who looks to exploit society and looks to exploit rules like that. Just like somebody on the Titanic, or just like somebody trying to join the NBA could exploit a rule. And if we don't have a simple way to prevent it, then we just have to kind of say, okay, well, look, we can't give you a blood test. Everybody agreed that that's not a good way to determine gender. That's offensive. So there's your shoes. Like, we start on Monday.
I just feel like it's such an outlier of possibilities that could happen, and the positive effects of opening sports to transgender kids, particularly on that lower level. Don't even the higher levels. I mean, that's far down the road. But for these kids, these little boys, these little transgender boys, these little transgender girls, they just want to play soccer. They just want to be like their peers. I mean, it could be so life-changing for them and so monumental for them if we open that door. If random bimbo X guy wants to do something like that, well, it's the risk you run to benefit on a fundamental developmental level for thousands and thousands of kids around the country. I think it's worth the risk.
Okay, well, I think that's a really fair answer, and I completely understand your logic there. The other example people give, because like you said, they are going through this with children, is, you have a daughter playing certain sports, and then there's a child who's transitioning, much like you described, of maybe taking hormones or whatever, and now they're opposing your daughter. It is at birth a male, and even though they're transitioning and whatnot, they still have a male frame, male musculature, and as you identified, there is a difference there genetically. So if that was your daughter, playing a soccer game, and on the other team is, basically a boy who's in transition to be a girl, do you feel like that's a danger to your daughter? Not that she's being exposed to that, but physically, of you have somebody that could actually hurt your daughter being more powerful or whatever, larger, that sort of thing.
I think at what age?
Let's just say, like, the age you mentioned, like 16, 15, like a teenager. Because I agree with you that I think past a certain age, it's kind of irrelevant at that point, and it's their own decision as an adult. But in this example, being that you'd be a parent, having a daughter, playing a sport, and on the opposing team is all girls and then one boy who's transitioning, and it's obvious,
Again, it's when you say it's obvious. So I know our listeners can't actually see me, but I'm 5'10". I have broad shoulders, a fairly decent musculature. Well, I mean, not decent. Okay, whatever. But I'm taller than the average man,
Right.
and I'm broader than a lot of men that I know.
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, and I wasn't always the tallest girl on any team. I mean, there would be girls who would be, you know, 6'1", 6'2" that we'd be playing basketball against. So is that girl who was born a girl, but she happened to be born at, 6'2", and musculature of fucking Serena Williams? Is it fair that she then, Serena Williams then goes against somebody like, I don't know, Anna Kournikova, who's 5'10", something like that, a
More of a
slightly
traditional woman in terms
smaller.
of like her musculature, just speaking generally.
How about let's go with stereotypical, not traditional.
Touche.
I mean, those height and weight and musculature disparities, especially in high school, happen all the time. I mean, I would go up as a girl who's 5'10". I would go up against girls who were 5'3", 5'4", much smaller than I was, and I would knock them the fuck over. Like, just because something that's 5'3" runs into something that's 5'10", 200 pounds, then yeah, if I was that 5'4" girl's mother and saw me walking across the court, I might be a little bit concerned because I could knock her over.
Right.
And we both are women. We both were born women. We are both cisgender. I mean, that was a lot of white females.
Sure.
But I mean, that disparity happens all the time.
Even in their own
general,
sex.
even within.
Yeah.
And then, the exact same thing can happen for males. You got boys in high school, especially around 15, 16. You got boys that are, 5'5", and you got guys that are 6'5".
Right.
And they'll go up against each other in athletics. And
So-
depending on how hard the 5'5" kid trains and how hard the 6'5" kid trains, there's strengths and weaknesses to both of their sizes.
Right. No, I hear you, and that's why maybe the future of this is just saying kids play what they want to play. And maybe there is no test that should be done, or there is no concern that really should be made, because as you identified, within their own sex, there's quite disparity in terms of size. Now, is that disparity ever going to be so much that a woman is actually a man? No. But if we're going to have the ability to consider them a man socially or by their own definition, then maybe we just should not have any rules about who plays what and not have those categories. Like to transition to another example of being, I know award shows aren't like the caliber for how we define gender and that sort of thing, but we do have like leading actress and leading male and that sort of thing. Of course, there's all-encompassing subjects like best picture and whatever, and that has nothing to do with male or female. But would awards and that sort of thing go away then? We would no longer look at male versus female, just as if we were allowing people to come into a sport. It's like, as long as you have 2 eyes, 2 feet, and 2 hands, or whatever, it doesn't matter.
I think that is something that we should aspire to. But I also think that there's nothing wrong with, being a man, and there's nothing wrong with being a woman, and there's nothing wrong with that line that separates us. Because I think that there are, intriguing differences, and each has their strengths and each has their weaknesses. And so to me, it's not about wiping all gender away. It's just about gender being lower on the list of how we identify people.
And not being such a yes or no type of thing.
Right. And it's, I like to think of myself as when I go through the list of, self-check, who am I, where am I, what am I doing with my life? I start with who am I? I'm a human being. Like, I'm a resident of planet Earth. That is what is the most broad definition of who I am. That is step one.
Right. I wish more people began with that.
Exactly.
I think we'd have less conflict.
Right. There'd be probably less global warming too. We'd probably be trying to do something more about that. For all like, hey, we're humans and we need to live on this planet. So let's work together on that level.
Right, and it
And
doesn't matter if we're man or woman because we share that common goal. And I
right,
hear what you're saying of when you strip away some of those things, it's ironic because we're talking about society putting those things on us and society determining man or woman. Ironically, now we're talking about having to strip them away and remove it from the conversation because we don't want it to define us externally. Right.
right, and it's not about removing it from the conversation. It's about removing the preconceptions that we have about men and women. Like it's fine. It's okay. I don't shy away from identifying as a woman. Like it's not like I'm a cisgendered female. Like it is. I am okay with that. I am proud of that. I I would honestly like. I mean, you can take a little bit of offense to this, but I would much rather be a woman than a man. Like I find
No
it
offense. No offense.
much more like, and maybe it's because of how I was raised and what I've been equipped with. Like I'm excited to walk out into the world every day and represent a female. And
Sure.
then whoever wants to stand next to me shoulder to shoulder as a female is fine. And whoever wants to stand next to me as a male is fine too. But as long as we all, stand together and I am not told to stand, behind or in front of a man, that's fine. Let's stand together and embrace all of the strengths that we have and help each other with our weaknesses, which, sounds all high and mighty and feels like a theme song should play, but that's how I feel.
Amen. I agree with you. Well, let's finish up with just killing some stereotypes. One, do women bitch more than men?
I think Americans bitch more than any other nation. Do women bitch more than men? I think it depends on the woman and it depends on the man. It depends on what you're bitching about. I feel like guys bitch about sports all the time. And by bitch, I mean complain. Men complain about sports, they just complain about different things.
Okay. All right.
So no. Boils down to no.
Solid no. Okay. Can women be more capable in the kitchen than men?
I feel like that's a no question. I mean, how many famous male chefs are there in the world?
That's true. Are women less athletic than men?
Do I need to bring up Serena Williams again?
Good answer. Women less intelligent than men?
Oh, I fucking hate that question. No, of course not. Like, no, that's so ridiculous. And I've had conversations with people where they've tried to like bring up facts that like women aren't as good, like they're physically and, chemically unable to be as good at math as men. And I'm just
well, whoever made that argument, let me just jump in to answer this part of it for you, is that whoever made that argument is an idiot. Because when you look at, I know we don't agree now that we should look at gender and yes or no question wise, but unfortunately we have the data, and when you look at it, there are more women going into sciences than men. There are more women going into, for example, healthcare fields than men. And, we can debate why that is, but that is. And clearly women would not be going into a field like that if they were not able to handle the curricular requirements of it, if they couldn't handle, the science background that it necessitates. So that person is a total idiot, and everyone out there needs to know that that logic is long gone. And when you look at the data, women are probably our only hope in terms of the future of healthcare and the future of science in this country. So we need to get that clear. But another stereotype question to drill at you real quick. Creative. Are women more creative than men?
No. Other humans are more or less creative than other humans.
Okay.
I think women, I think women have just as much capability to be creative as men do. But it might look different to what men are used to seeing creatively, but no.
Okay.
No.
Are women less sexual than men?
No.
Do you think that makes men feel uncomfortable?
I think it makes some men feel uncomfortable.
Why do you think that is? because of the stereotype that women who are comfortable with sex or sexuality are like sluts or something, like the slut
Oh, right.
shaming, or
Right, exactly. And that's once again society placing, stereotypes on women, and we are to be subjective, and we are to be obedient, and we are to be ladylike, which is just ladylike. Like, no, I can be all things, but I am mostly human. But no, I just yeah, well, yeah, slut shaming. I can't, like, that's a whole different, that's a whole nother podcast of
we'll save
women
it
and
for another one then.
sexuality.
Well, Shannon, thank you for sharing your viewpoint on gender with me. I really appreciate it. And
I
you
feel like it
are
was just women that we talked. We didn't get to talk about guys. I have questions about guys too. Maybe we'll do that in another one then.
all right. We'll hit the guys next time. Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks, Greg.